Welcome back to the second part of the Unreal Engine 5 vlog. If you haven't seen the first part, you might want to go check it out so this video has some context. The link is in the description box below. Let's recap what we talked about in the previous video real quick. We had a look at some of the main features and what they do, mainly the new Lumen lighting system, and we'll really be putting Nanite under the magnifying lens in this second part. We had a look at Unreal Engine 5 system requirements and found out that in order to get decent performance out of Lumen, you need a video card that supports hardware ray tracing, meaning an NVIDIA RTX 2000 series or an AMD RX 6000 series or higher. We found that the average Steam user is currently running a GTX 1060 with 8GB of video RAM and would have to spend around $400 to upgrade it. We also checked out Epic's Matrix demo, and in this second half, we'll be checking out how easy it is to convert our Taviana The Origins UE4 project to UE5. We'll compare the performance, visuals, take a closer look at Nanite, and come to a conclusion. So let's get going. First things first, we'll make a copy of our project, and while that's going, let's reply to some of your comments. Riley says, "What's the point of making a 30-minute video about something that will not be in the game, when the game is years late? That's suspicious, to say the least." Well, you see, Riley, as you develop a game, Epic Games are also improving their game engine alongside you. And at some point, your game and a new version of the game engine will cross paths. And you'll have a decision to make. Do you stay in your current lane or do you switch lanes for the next leg of your journey? Since we're developing this game in the public eye, it makes sense to inform people about our decision and why we made it, especially since Unreal Engine 5 is such a big deal and since we've received so many questions about it. Knowing what not to do is just as important as knowing what to do, if not more. So we're done copying here, and by the way, the project isn't actually 40GB big, that's only the uncompiled version. So let's go ahead and right-click on this bad boy, and apparently all we have to do is click on Switch Unreal Engine version, select 5.0, click OK, and double-click. So let's see what happens.
A few moments later.
Well, that was pretty quick. Didn't expect it to be that quick. Right off the bat, we have some errors here. I could probably just ignore that for now. Quicksort bridge, we don't need that for now. So here we are, I've loaded Mitrovitz. We're gonna let these shaders compile. Give that a couple of minutes. This is where that i9 comes in, by the way. We had a conversation in our Discord, by the way, link in the description box below, with somebody who said that an Intel i9 is overkill. Well, this is why you need it. You need it to compile stuff quickly.
2,000 years later.
And well, here we are. Let me change the time to something reasonable. Let there be light, and there was light, and there we go. We're back in the Soviet Union where things make sense, as opposed to that crazy American Matrix city with the big buildings. You feel like a little ant. A very scary place. And right off the bat, our landscape material doesn't work correctly. There's some kind of issue with the snow. And we're getting this weird bug with the trees. I think this has something to do with the wind. So I'm gonna try and fix the tree bug by disconnecting the world position offset node. Click apply and hey, it fixed it. See guys, this is why you use base materials, because then you just change one thing and it updates the whole map. The problem is we're not gonna get wind on our trees now. And our trees look ugly. But at least they work, right? See, we're not getting any wind. But at least they work. I'm not sure what's wrong with the landscape. I'm not going to go into that right now. Well, it turns out that the materials on our roads don't work either. I've got no idea what's going on. But let's click play and see if we can at least play the game. And my project froze.
298 frozen patties later.
Well, and here we are guys, Taviana on Unreal Engine 5. There was a crash initially, but I fixed a couple of things, including the roads. Unfortunately, I didn't manage to fix the tree materials or the landscape materials, so we're not going to be seeing any grasses on the roads right now because they're generated using the landscape material. And what I'm noticing is I'm not getting any footstep sounds, so I'm not sure what's going on there, but at least it works, right? Do you guys know who that is? So essentially what we're seeing right now is the same thing that we have in Unreal Engine 4. Nanite and Lumen are completely disabled in this game right now, and it seems we're getting about 50 FPS. Let's see if the watch works. Well, the watch does work, and it seems that we're not getting any shaking, so that's good. Let's see how much FPS we get inside of buildings. Oh, it seems that my footstep sounds are working on the roads. So again, I'm not sure what's going on there. But it seems that we're also getting around 50 FPS in the buildings. So what I think that we should do right now is we should compare how much FPS we get in Unreal Engine 4 and Unreal Engine 5 and see if it's the same or if we're getting a performance hit with Unreal Engine 5. Another thing I've noticed is that we get these white borders around our combo boxes in the user interface, and they're not supposed to be there. I guess it looks kind of cool, but the combo boxes themselves look a little bit different, so it looks like there's a bunch of little changes in this engine, and you kind of have to go through the entire game and see if everything's working right. The text doesn't fit into that button right there. Let's see if changing languages works. Well, everything seems to work, it's just that we have these tiny little visual changes. So as I said, you kind of have to go through the entire game and see if everything looks the way it did in Unreal 4. Not a big deal, but I thought it's worth mentioning. So here we are in Unreal Engine 4, and it seems that we're getting about the same that we get in Unreal Engine 5. Maybe a little bit less even in some places. Let's see inside the buildings. Inside the buildings we're just stuck at 60 FPS. So that's interesting. In Unreal Engine 5 we seem to get slightly more FPS on the street, but we get less in the buildings. Whereas in Unreal Engine 4 it's the other way around. Not sure why that is. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to turn on Lumen, which is Unreal Engine 5's brand new lighting system. Now keep in mind that I'm running a GTX 1060 video card which does not support hardware ray tracing. So I'm not meeting the minimum system requirements for Lumen, and we're going to have to use software ray tracing mode, and we're going to get like 10 FPS. But we want to see it anyway.
1 minute 37 seconds later.
Well, here we are guys, we've got Lumen enabled, and first impressions. I like the smooth shadows that I talked about in part 1 of this devlog. But everything seems to be kinda dark. If I fly into the street over here, very dark. Even though it's daytime, our sun is high up in the sky. But everything seems to be in a very dark shadow. Wow, it's really dark inside the buildings. I don't know what's going on here, if I set something up incorrectly or if I need to set something up. I have no idea. If you know, let us know in the comments below. But performance-wise, it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be, considering that my video card doesn't support hardware ray tracing. We're getting about 40 FPS, whereas in the Matrix demo I was getting like 10-11 FPS. So performance-wise, I'm very impressed. Not sure why everything's so dark though. Wow, those rooms are completely dark. Let's see inside the shop. There's bigger windows inside the shop. And inside of the shop is also completely dark. So I have no idea if I'm supposed to set something up or not. I don't know, what do you guys think? Let us know in the comments below. And now we're gonna try Nanite. So before we talk about Nanite, let's recap how 3D models work in games. Up until Unreal Engine 5 was released, we were limited by the amount of polygons on the screen. Polygons are these little triangles that the model is made up of. To get around that, each model has LODs, which stands for level of detail. So each model contains a couple of copies of itself, but each copy is made up of less polygons. As you walk away from the model, it switches between all the LODs based on your distance, and that prevents too many polygons from being on the screen. With Nanite, all of that doesn't matter anymore because we're not limited by polygons. We can display photorealistic models that contain hundreds of thousands of polygons, and we don't have to make LODs, which will save a bunch of time. But that doesn't mean we can just convert all our models to high poly versions and get photorealistic graphics. You see, to make the low poly models look realistic, we use a method called baking, where you take the high poly model, place it over the low poly model, and send light rays towards the models from every direction. This transfers the details from the high poly model onto the texture maps of the low poly model, kind of like an X-ray. But how do you know where to draw the textures on a model? With a UV map. The UV map is the model unwrapped onto a two-dimensional plane. The problem is that since the high poly models were intended just to be used for baking, they don't have a UV map. So to get the high poly models to work, we'd pretty much have to start every model from scratch, which would take a very long time. Alrighty, so let's give Nanite a try. What I've got here is 6,000 lemonade bottles. And I seem to be getting around 35 FPS. 30 to 35 FPS, regardless of what direction I look at these lemonade bottles from. Yep, I seem to be getting around 30 FPS. So if I go into my content drawer here, enabling Nanite should be as simple as right-clicking on the model, going to Nanite and selecting Enable. And there we go, Nanite should be enabled now. Let's just save that really quickly. There we go. And let's just double check that Nanite is enabled. I'm going to click on Lit, go to Nanite Visualization, and click on Triangles. And there we go, Nanite is in fact enabled. So let me go back into regular lit mode, and I still seem to be getting around 30 FPS. Regardless of the angle that I look at these lemonade bottles from, so I was expecting a better result. Am I missing something? Did I do something wrong? But this is what we really want to see, right? Wow, my FPS is really low now. It's like 11, 10. So I've noticed an issue with Nanite. Notice on the edge of this building here, we have this nice decal. And then on the bottom here, we also have a kind of a dirty decal. And also on the top here. Now notice what happens if I convert this mesh to Nanite. Let's give those shaders a little while to compile.
One eternity later.
Notice what happened to all the decals. They're gray. Well, it turns out that Nanite doesn't actually support opacity or transparency at the moment. Let's see what the trees look like. Hey, the trees have no leaves. Is it like wintertime? But there's no snow on the ground. That's strange. Well, I think that's because Nanite doesn't actually work on trees either. Alright, so I've loaded a piece of Taviana. I've got Lumen enabled right now, and I'm getting around 35 FPS. So what I'm going to do now is, I'm going to try and convert all our models to Nanite. So we're going to have Lumen and Nanite enabled in this project. So let's go ahead and do that and hope that my computer doesn't blow up.
Later that same evening.
And well, here we are. My computer didn't explode, Nanite is enabled, and I seem to be getting around 32 FPS. So pretty much no difference at all. Let's just double check that it is enabled. And as we can see, Nanite is actually enabled on everything. So yeah guys, I've got no idea if I'm doing something wrong or what the problem is, but I don't seem to be getting any significant increase of FPS using Nanite. You've probably noticed that most of our models are completely grayed out, especially the nature, and that's because, as I said before, Nanite doesn't support transparency, and models such as trees, grasses are almost completely transparent in most places. But a lot of our building models also have some sort of decal, some sort of transparency on them, and parts of those are also completely grayed out. So as things stand right now, we can't really use Nanite on pretty much anything in the game. So what's the conclusion? Well, Lumen's performance is better than expected on Taviana, but the interiors of buildings are very dark. I'm sure that can be fixed, but for the most part, the end results, at least on the outside, look pretty similar in this particular project. Nanite's performance was inconclusive for me. I don't know if I did something wrong, but there were no major gains in FPS, at least from my tests. And due to the fact that Nanite doesn't support opacity yet, it can't be used on most of our models anyway. So the conclusion is, we'll wait for a couple of updates of UE5 to be released, and then we'll try again. In the meanwhile, we'll stick to UE4. I hope you guys found this video insightful. If you did, press the thumbs up button, subscribe, consider supporting us on Patreon at patreon.com/TavianaTheOrigins, and I'll smell you guys later.